If you're in the room, raise your hand. We're going to run a mic to you so that the people on the web can hear the question. And then we have a mic over here for all the people who are going to answer the questions, right? If you are on the web, you can do one of two things. You can send an email to the Cornerstone mailbox at cornerstone@rutgers.edu, and that's being monitored throughout the session. And you can also submit a question online through the live video stream, and that's being monitored too. So try to do those in real time. So I want to go over completed and stabilization activities that are continuing from the original phase, updates on the two major projects within phase 2, and then some ongoing operational things, in particular around reporting and procurement. So key activities, so this is lining up with the things that are have been in process or encompassed in phase 1. Budget planning and forecasting went back to October. The data migration from RBHS, from Banner payroll, expense management, procurement stabilized in terms of accounts payable in May, and we've been working business as usual since then. In financial management, the monthly close process was initiated in March and is going to be ongoing. Identified accounting and payroll posting issues, and I'll talk about what's left of those shortly. And then we'll go into grant and contract accounting. These are the things that have been completed, but there's several things that are underway currently and will go on for some time. So let me get to those. So these are the things in financial management that are still open. So in terms of unprocessed transactions, we're down to a small number that have not been cleared, and these are actually not, these are not a result of Cornerstone. These are regular PeopleSoft suspense entries that have to be cleared, and there's been a lot of back and forth with departments in terms of where to put these suspense transactions, and that number is down significantly. So this will continue. There was an April 10 memo from the Controller's Office, but I think everybody has been contacted who's in this area and has to work through the issues to get those through. That's an ongoing thing. There are things that are going to land in suspense in PeopleSoft. They did before this new system. They will continue that way. Year-end activities, the year-end adjustments and accruals are going on right now. Most are done. We're interacting now with the auditors, and that is a process that will continue until the audit report is issued. But KPMG is in and working with us in terms of analyzing entries and understanding reconciliations and other pieces. They began their final field work in August, and we'll be continuing work on that. So there are things that are probably yet to come in terms of adjustments there coming out of the audit, as well as the project to general ledger reconciliation, which is close to done, but it's not done yet. There's a series of discretionary account balances, and I'll talk about this more in a minute, but one's called BR3 that came from RIOS, and then RBHS discretionary accounts, restricted gift accounts, for instance, that were treated as sponsored projects before, were transferred over as sponsored projects from Banner, and are going to be going through a process with GCA to clean up and move them to a non-sponsored set of projects, the same as the rest of restricted gifts and similar types of things within the rest of Rutgers. But that's a project at a time activity. This impacts RBHS. It will any new restricted gifts coming in are being set up in the same fashion as the rest of Rutgers, so that we don't add to this, but the list that's there has to get analyzed and worked through and a process to transfer its balances and information over. And that's going to go on through the fall. We have a current issue in terms of expense report with population of fields. This is the accounts, right, or the charging projects. And we've been working with Oracle on that for a couple weeks now and just having issue getting done. Yes, can we get a mic run, please? That's so that they can hear your question.
I was wondering that because of this issue of the projects in expense reports, are we supposed to hold off on submitting anything, or should we just go ahead and process them since they're going to expire in a few days and then we have an issue over 60 days?
The 60-day issue won't be an issue. We've already decided that we're going to be lax on that for the reason that it's nobody's fault that's submitting. You can submit the expense reports. Not everybody is having the issue. If you find out you're having the issue, we're asking you to hold off. But are you saying that the grant or the project's expiring, or is it just 60 days you're interested? Okay, so you should be fine. We're going to be a little bit more lax on that because it's no one's fault.
Yeah, it's a software bug that will continue to push them on.
I was just curious why this happened like 3 weeks ago, and we just got an email from Central like last week. I mean, I found out about this from other departments before I found out about it from Central, and then there was silence for 2 weeks from you guys. I think this is something you need to get out to the people
We
ASAP.
agree. We agree. We just didn't realize the extent of it. We thought it was a few people. Once we realized, we prepared the communication to go out.
Initially, it looked like it was an isolated issue.
Correct.
And that we had identified where it had been isolated. It was only through some more information that we recognized, and also working with Oracle to see that it was a systemic issue, not an isolated one. So as soon as that came out, I'm sorry, that's what it is.
Well-
As soon as that came out, we got the information out because we recognized that it wasn't just the people we were talking to, it was broader.
Then maybe we need to communicate with you better, because my whole campus knew it was a systematic issue before you guys did.
Nobody passed that on to us. So please, reach out to us. If we don't know, we can't fix
Yeah,
it.
this is one thing that there are hundreds and hundreds, there are thousands of users in the system, and we do need that information. We can't see every one of them, and there were some circumstances here where, you know, if you did this, it would happen. If you did this, it wouldn't happen. So, you know, I would encourage that communication back when you see something like this. It's the only way we can isolate it and then get the word to Oracle on this one. Yeah.
Hey, we had done charging instructions in PeopleSoft to take things out of suspense at the end of June, and they were accepted in the system, but then they still showed up in our suspense account. So it's not a PeopleSoft issue for all of them. It's just that it's not connecting with the financial system. So we did a reversing entry as we were told to do for fiscal close,
Who's got
but we're not sure how to proceed because it's going to show up on the books that way.
Yeah, I think Dee, who's managing the payroll department, had mentioned that there was some discrepancies that she was researching. So I'm going to follow back up with her because it's not widespread, but I'm not sure what those off entries are like that. So let me follow up if you
Get
could
your
send me
information.
something. So
Sure.
Betsy
Betsy.
Cafiro, yeah.
Okay, and then the other thing was for the BR3 accounts, is that are they gonna get new project numbers? Because I know for the 8s, that's what the big issue is we can't put money in
Yes.
it.
So yes, they will get new project numbers once that review takes place, and we move them over to non-sponsored
Okay.
gift projects as opposed to the sponsored side.
Okay,
Okay?
Yeah, they just have to be analyzed and then shifted.
okay.
What's your name, just so I can mark it down? Okay, thanks.
I have a question with the BR3s. My question, I guess, is why are you moving them? And my concern would be, depending on how they're tagged in the system, this can affect your F&A calculation. Because the reason the BR3 accounts were in grant accounting to begin with were they were gift accounts for research. And we need to back out all our direct dollars on research when we calculate our F&A rate. So it was an easy way to identify the gift accounts that were for research.
Well, we can use a functional classification instead, but they're not truly, they're not sponsored programs by definition. They don't generate F&A by definition. There's lots of other funds besides grants and contracts that support research or our research funds, and we do capture those through functional classification so that it gets into the F&A report. That's important. But these are, they have the additional overhead of having to go through GCA and all the other pieces when that's not necessary by the sponsors or the gift givers thing. So and they're technically not in the right place.
Okay, thank you.
And the biggest set of issues is from RBHS, where that whole classification of gift counts was considered that. So we're trying to get that fixed. It's just going to be time. Some things about the chart of accounts. So we've been working with this chart of accounts for almost a year now and recognizing the good things and the bad things out of it, and have done between the controller's office and the budget office, identified a number of places where improvements can be made and it can be used better, easier, or more understandable how we want to do that. We're also going through the process of establishing system rules so that combinations of UDs and Os that really don't exist can't be created by accident, and we've had that circumstance this year. So a couple of things in particular in the business line: how do we account for which is the functional classification? How do we account for the things we need to count there, but then provide other information to units who want to track particular programs, and then taking a look at some of the accounts and fund types. There's been some definite understanding through the closeout of the unrestricted funds of things that need to move between fund types, things that are in the wrong fund type, through no fault other than it got converted that way. So, but now's the time to get everything there, and more importantly, come back out to the community with training and definitions about the use of these fields, the consistent use of these fields. This is a big deal because it on the one hand needs to drive management reporting. These allow for analysis to be done on certain key classifications. It also drives our financial statements, and it drives our F&A report. So a lot of things going on in business line in particular. And then the UDs and Os are going to look through where, again, that worked, where it got too complex, maybe didn't work, and try to streamline and make it better. That's not something that's going to be going on in the current year, but could be in place for the next budget cycle if there were cleanup of that. A lot more to come on this. I think the communication is going to go out to the field pretty soon. If we do something, we do have to look at all the other feeder systems, so it's not simply a matter of changing values or changing use, and we'll have to get into all that. Within grant and contract accounting, the stabilization effort is to get set up of awards with no compliance holds to less than a 15-day. And GCA has been working really hard on two things. One is, what are their processes for getting these set up to get it down to that? And also, what are the compliance holds that are out there? And what is driving them? So between working with compliance office and departments, trying to make that work better so as to get reviews expedited, get processing through sooner, so that when something comes clean and it's ready to set up in GCA, we can hit that 15-day turnaround. So they've been working intensively on the backlog, making good progress against it, but they're still now running up against these compliance things, and that's just going to be a matter of communications going on. This is the big deal here. An account-by-account review, project-by-project review, something like, what is it, 11,000? 11,000 different projects to make sure that they're set up precisely right, that they're set up with the right sponsor information, the right charging information, the right rate information, billing information, all those sorts of things, and to clean up all the billing, all the manual billing, all the automated billing, collection of cash, all these steps that had to happen during the interim until we could get set up for Oracle to do automated billing of grants and contracts. This is going to go on through the fall. It's being prioritized by those things that are active accounts and those that we know have some certain issues in them, like ones that converted from Banner, as an example. And then it will move on to expired accounts, and then that set of discretionary accounts I talked about before that would, once they're understood and set up correctly, they would be reclassified into non-sponsored restricted projects. Anything else on these guys? So a lot of work going on in GCA, and got a lot of help from Huron Consulting in there. So let me take a pause for questions regarding the stabilization, grants. We'll be talking later about reporting, training, and other kinds of information. Okay, let's talk about phase 2. So there are there are a lot of projects in phase 2, but two major ones. The first one is the HR business process redesign. And this just gives a feel for what's going on in the stages of the project. So stage 1. So when I first saw that, I said, is that really supposed to be let's go? And then I was corrected to understand it's letting go of the old ways, recognizing past successes, but preparing for the change. So this was something going on within university HR as part of its strategic planning and how the future should work with that. So that went on through part of 2017. The rest of 2017 is around what are the things we can do in a new model. How do we structure HR functions? And this is HR and payroll. So I'm just using that as general. Help employees embrace the change that's coming on. Improving the processes, a lot of information about this. There were 107 processes identified that could use revamping. Some of them could be done right away. Some will be done in the next, let's say, 12 months. Some will have to wait for the new HR payroll system. But each one of them will improve throughput and improve information. We need to make organizational adjustments. That's going to happen in 2018 along with the processes, and ultimately get into the human resources system, but not until we're ready, not until all that business process and organizational change is in place. So new way of managing HR and payroll throughout the enterprise. There'll be communication going on out soon in the next couple days, I think, right? Yeah. What's that? Yes. Okay, today about an activity analysis that's part of this. And that is there are lots and lots of people who do HR and payroll functions throughout the university. And it's really trying to say, well, where are you? How much do you do? Really to understand the impact of changes as they might happen and the kind of information flow that might be needed between departments and colleges and chancellor units and central HR and back again. So this activity analysis information will go out to chancellors, deans, directors, that whole level saying it's coming. Here are the people whom we have already identified who will be part of that analysis. And then a letter to each person who has been identified to say what is it not, how are we going to go about it. And it's basically to pull together, what are we doing from end to end in HR and payroll so that it can be optimized, it can be made to work better, it can be automated correctly. Whoops. Yes, hi.
If you could please go back to the previous slide.
You bet.
Okay, so on stage 2,
Mhm.
I strongly believe that employees embrace change when it's for the better.
Mhm.
And I would like you to please elaborate on stage 4.
Sure. So I agree with you. They embrace change when it's for the better and when they have enough information to understand what it is and how it impacts them. And it requires all those stages. So that's an important element. And that's going to, frankly, continue throughout this whole thing. Adjusting the organization. So do we have HR structured in the right way? Do we have the right types of people in the central area? Do we have the right types of functions in chancellor units, in schools, in departments? So part of this activity analysis to understand, well, who's doing what now? And is that the right way to deploy folks? Is there the right training, throughout? So we don't even know what that means yet. Other than that, we do have some ideas of what it might mean for central HR, but in the distributed part of it is actually much bigger. And that's the piece yet to come. And again, I'm saying HR and payroll in one. So this is this missing some? It is missing those arrows. Where are my arrows? There's a beautiful little set of arrows that should go up there. By the way, these are all going to be posted this afternoon to the Cornerstone and the Finance website, so you can download this stuff. And then you can see the lovely arrows. So what they were doing was really elaborating on the information that I was just conveying in terms of, it would say things like finalized model, approved model, what's the service delivery model from central HR point of view, mobilizing change networks and pilot activities right in here. There are some units that wish to pilot different of these ideas and try them out and give feedback working on that, so it's not just a big bang. So what is the pilot strategy? What's the analysis coming out of that? What kinds of changes from a result of that pilot activity would we make to it? Repeat, change management, communicate and educate, communication, and stakeholder engagement adjustments, and then how do we measure things, in terms of improvement or success or not, so that we can adjust down the way. And it makes a lot more sense when the arrows appear. Questions on HR? Really, we're at a point where it'll start hearing more about this because with the result of the studies and such and this activity analysis, we'll start getting into the point of starting to talk about these pilots and what different things could be done.
Mike, I just wanted to add that we've been working with a large stakeholder group from across the university. I think it's about 30 people, and getting input both on current state processes and developing this activity analysis. So already the process is designed to be highly representative and gain input from the community.
Yeah. So, and that's a starting point. Then you develop a theorem, how you want to do it, do the piloting to try it, adjust, and then start to deploy. Again, at the end of this is the implementation of the new HR payroll system. Again, not until we're ready to do that. Other questions about this? The other major project is the Student Experience Improvement Initiative, we call SEII. it really has been focusing on core student services, enrollment management, registrar, financial aid, student accounts, and how to make those work better throughout all the different campuses and chancellor units. It has been an intensive process that's involved looking at the whole admissions enrollment management function and what should be done where in terms of that. Financial aid, similarly to that, but also with the overlay of operational and compliance questions, since we are one financial aid unit as an entire university, and that's governed by a lot of federal regulation. And then the concept of a one-stop shop, or both virtual and physical, on each of the major university campuses, so that there would be a single place to go for students or parents or whomever who need to get answers to questions. But combine that with a virtual set of web-based tools that could really take care of most of the activities, but tie them together. We recognize in some of the analysis that we had a lot of online activities in the whole student services area, but some of them, they were not linked, not consistent, some didn't work. It was pretty poor. So that's a lot of good analysis there. We're now developing service level agreements between central enrollment functions and the chancellor units and how they work, because they will work differently, different process and policy enhancements, the development of the one-stop model, and also a significant amount of service training, service information, or how should the roles work vis-a-vis the customers who come in the door or call on the phone. Tied in with this is requirements gathering for a new student information system. We recognize that the student information system is probably the weakest link of all of our admin systems, but that we needed to do so much policy and process and organizational review before we were ready to touch software that it has been kind of put back. We're getting to the point where we can go out in the market and look for and select a system to have ready down the road. There's also a lot of work that can be done on websites and online tools right now. OIT is partnering with the folks in the student service functions to really see what opportunities do we have, short of a new student information system, to make it better. And that's working. And then we're now working on the student account side of it. This is where we will be going in short order, and then key work in terms of how the organizations work, how they relate to one another between central functions and campus functions, and what do we need in a new student information system, and then some physical work on structures to house these one-stop shops. This gives some idea of what's behind the idea of the one-stop service center. We have students from recruitment stage through graduation. There's argue, and we do, that there's another stage in terms of alums out here too. There are multiple ways to interact. The last one you want to do is in person, because that's the one that causes the student the most time and the most energy and effort to set aside. So what we can do, web, email, or phone, comes first, but really putting down the student first philosophy as the most critical element of the whole plan. There's a concept in the one-stop that 90% of what's going to be asked could be done by a set of well-trained generalists who know the basics of financial aid and student accounts and the basics of registration questions or enrollment management questions, and triage those things face-to-face. That takes care of most of them, and the more complex things go to specialists in those particular areas. These are the 4 areas that we're really focusing on. How do we manage the high volume transactions there, and what technology do we bring into play? Again, customer service, performance management, reporting and metrics are necessary here, but the whole idea is to fulfill at least partially one of the goals in the university strategic plan of improving the student experience and, frankly, stopping the runaround and of students trying to deal with issues in these areas. So a lot more work to go on that. Questions on this? The student information system, again, combining the one that we had from UMD&J and the one that has existed in Rutgers for so many years and some still in COBOL, right? It's old. Has got to be replaced, but that's a big thing, big deal. Other things in phase 2, I've talked about the HR payroll. There's an effort that is going to commence commencing about reporting and analytics. Research administration is continuing to work on the what we call the e-commerce side of it for compliance, for proposal submission, the integration with Oracle for that. What are the business process improvements that can take place? In particular, a study in terms of animal operations. Some additional things in terms of financial management regards fixed assets and treasury. I'll talk about upgrade in a minute. Extending the financial planning model and transitioning it to a cloud-based system. And then strategic sourcing in procurement and expense and travel management programs that also incorporate things like travel and expense cards. So lots of things in the rest of the scope here. So that is another one that would be beautiful if it came up the way it was supposed to. So when you download this, look at page 15, because it says on the left things like reconciling the general ledger, and on the right, what query to use. It's pretty useless to you this way. That's the thing. Short term, we're looking at providing more details in existing queries, but building custom reports and working with Oracle to improve how does it report out information naturally are the real critical pieces. So I apologize for this, but let me show you this page. And these are new or modified reports. Some of these have just gone into production. So for instance, let's see, what did we just bring on? These, right? Down here? Okay, that's on this page, yeah. So these are ones that are in place, like project cost detail, that's a new one. Transaction summary report, that's new. This is the reporting tool that it's available in. There's going to be a communication about all these. There was a top 10 list of reports that's really working through bit by bit. So a lot of good things have gotten into the report structures. These are the things that are due to get finished this month. The sponsored projects, fund balance summary report, and period actual report, monthly activity, transaction detail, a lot of these relating to grants and contracts, things that would replace the queries that have been necessary to use in the interim stage here. Which are the ones that are going up shortly? 69?
Well, the first two, 71 and 72, were approved yesterday, so those are getting into production.
Okay, so 71 and 72 here are going into production the next day or so. And then you said 69?
71, which is
71. Yeah. Similar to the SD, with good detail, and then you said 69, right?
69, yeah, that's a new concept. We're going to work on explaining that, but that's where, possibly, what was her name, Jill, when we have an interface from PeopleSoft, sometimes it gets stuck in our project module. And
Use
so
the-
this,
use the-
sorry, so this report is going to make everyone aware of what's kind of stuck in a project cost situation that is being worked on by somebody in Central to get it unstuck. So I'm wondering if some of your stuff is stuck there. That's what I'm wondering. But you'll be able to see it soon. And then 13 is just the chart of accounts segment listing for projects. I use that all the time, and it wasn't showing up new projects. And it's going to show the revenue account that's going to be charged on your sponsored project for revenue. It's going to show, I guess, the true award end date, the related project and award number. It's all these reference fields that we thought that would be very helpful for you. So it's a good report. And the other ones are pretty close, but they're still in final field testing.
So look out for communication on what they are, what they do, how to use them. We intend to do webinars, some in-person training, a lot of this, because these have been the things that people have been asking for and waiting for. And we really needed to get them out. As everyone over here will tell you, I've been pushing them really hard on these, but we don't want them to go out wrong. So they've been extensively tested. So these are going to get out if they're not already, and should make life easier for a lot. This is not the end. There's lots more to do. Continue to list. And there we go again. This was another great one. So we really have three types that we're really focusing on, and something called the Enhanced Reporting Initiative, and in particular account analysis. So there are three categories: management, which is dealing with Board of Governors reports and things that I got to deal with, but more importantly, things that have to do with the general ledger, like modified account analysis report, P&L with ending fund balances, something that's been needed, and then project and GL reconciliation reports, so that we can see the crosswalk between the stuff going on in the project module and how it transfers to the general ledger. So these are some things that are in this enhanced reporting initiative that are being thought through and underway. It'll also be some things, system rules and such, that'll improve that process. So a lot of work on reporting. We're also looking at some broader based ones, like tying in information more directly between procurement information and how it shows up in the GL, or always in sponsored projects area and always in payroll, tied that. So if you have ideas, if you have requests, if you have something you really want to see, kick it in to us, because we'll look at it, analyze it, put it in the queue, and start working on it. Again, we're also working with Oracle to adjust different screens so that they represent better the way that we want to look at stuff. So that's something that is a continued iterative process. Questions on reporting? Yeah, can you, right up here, right up here.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to mention that they still seem to be pretty painful. I mean, I know that you come up with many reports, but for example, the report 72, not a project report, I think is the screen before that. RU 72, GL, transaction summary report. Yes, it's a good report, but then if you want to find out what an expense is all about or what comprises a certain expense, you have to drill down. When you drill down, it goes to another screen, and then it gives you about 20,000 entries, and then you try to find the right entry so that you can figure out what it was, what kind of expense it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it says fetching data. So because they're so long, it's not very user-friendly. I mean, reports that used to take me 50 minutes to complete takes me hours, and even then I'm not so sure that I'm reporting correctly to my directors. It's been very painful, and the help desk has been, I mean, there's someone there triaging the question, but then you have to escalate it up to someone who actually knows something about the problem, and it takes weeks before you have an answer. Sometimes I don't have weeks before I have to report out on certain things. So that's my pain.
Well, part of the report initiative is to find out why some of these reports are taking forever to run, you know, to pull back the data. So, and we've been able to tweak some of the reports. The slide right before this was based on the user group that we pulled together, about 40 people from around the whole university, to come up with what's their biggest pain points, and give us like two reports from each of your areas, you know, whether they're management reports or GL or project reports, and what would you like to see in the next month and a half, and we're going to have them ready by October. So those are the biggest ones that we worked on initially, but we heard lots of comments, the same type of comments. We have, you know, too many reports, we need to consolidate, we need to figure out which ones are the best ones. The detailed report that is that's about to go out would be your best bet for, instead of, you know, drilling down, you could just run the detail and get all the detail in one shot, kind of like what we had in Legacy Rutgers in the past. But
And will that also give you the, let's say, the vendor name?
yes,
Not just the actual expense,
yeah,
but
so-
who was it paid to?
Exactly. There's lots of information people want to see, you know, the project number, the task number related to GL transactions, you know, when it's accounted for in the GL, they want to see all that. So we're incorporating that in these reports that we're rolling out for the beginning of October. And then that information will be incorporated into, you know, the other reports that are out there. We also have logged an issue with Oracle because of our performance in general, you know, opening screens and running processes and running reports, so that we're in evaluation stage as far as that. We've given them statistics.
And another report, I think this is on the scheduled processes report, the account analysis or account balances. That's also
Yeah.
pretty clunky. I mean,
Yes, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Well, it pulls back 150 columns of data. So one of the ones on here that we're working on for the beginning of October is a smaller version of that. And it's about 40 columns, but it's what everybody really wants to see out of the 150. And the performance is much better, so we've worked on that. Plus, we've given you some additional information. Like I said, we brought in the project number, the task, you know, on the GL transaction. So you can see, as your
And
project information
sorry.
is being accounted for in the GL, you can see the related project and task, and that's a big deal.
But
So
you
help you
should
reconcile.
we should also have the option of, rather than a monthly beginning balance, ending balance, you should have the option of having it by, you know, on an annual basis
Okay.
with all the expenses. I mean, it's just, you know, rather than trying to figure out, okay, what happened, you know,
Right.
month by month, and then
Right.
having 150 pages of transactions, you know, have the
Yeah.
options of being
Yeah,
able to
there's
ask for-
so much data out there, so whether you want it by summarized or by monthly, or you want even from, you know, the 1st to the 7th of the month or something like that, there's so many requests for how they want the data, so we're trying to accommodate all that in the new report structures, yeah.
So any chance that those will be ad hoc reports, that you don't have to keep running the process in order to find the same report that you want? It's time consuming. I mean, you have to put all the parameters in, and then it disappears. So if you make a mistake, you have to rerun it again. You have to spend about 15 minutes putting all the parameters in again.
Yep, I hear you, yep. Yeah, definitely the parameter is definitely an issue, re-putting in your, so we'll take that back, see what we can do.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, can I have your name too? I just want to,
It's Silvana Craig.
okay, thanks.
I just have a quick general question. Is the plan at some point to maybe scale down the number of reports? It's just, I feel like we've been inundated with so many reports, and a lot of them tell me the same information, maybe in a different format. So is there some plan in the future to?
Definitely,
So that
yes.
when I open it up, I'm not completely overwhelmed and, you know.
So some of the reports that we're just releasing or they're still in development have been in development for like 6 months. They're so complicated with the new tables that we've released all these other mini versions of, you know, parts of those reports so that you could get the data that you needed, you know, while you were waiting, unfortunately. So the data is much more complicated. We thought the old, you know, RIAS, Oracle, you know, tables were complicated, but this is much more complicated. And bringing in the subledger of the projects is definitely, you know, complicated some things there. So yeah, we definitely, the report group that we've implemented about a month and a half ago to have these reports, you know, what's your top reports you want by October 1st? They've definitely said, you know, you've got 500, you know, queries and reports out there. We've got to narrow this down. Some of them are obsolete and we need to get rid of them. So that's the plan.
Yeah, and some of the communication efforts are going to be around, here are the reports to use for this, kind of give a better primer of choices, for what examples. And same with the webinars, that be focusing on that. Because you're right, there are a lot of reports out there, and we need to focus people's attention on this one for this purpose, this one for that purpose.
And just
But a lot of people have a lot of different purposes, too.
Right, right. And just sort of as a follow-up, I know an email came out recently about a sort of a re-education of some of the courses or some of the trainings
Yeah.
being, but when I read the descriptions, they sort of, it sounds identical to the original one, so I'm wondering, in general, like how they've changed the format, or, because what I noticed initially when I took the training, that the people that sort of wrote, like came up with the reports, may not have necessarily understood at our level as to what we really needed. So it's almost like we need training, like sort of back to basics, like, in terms of whether it's reconciling, these are the reports that would be best, and, the most efficient way of doing things, and sort of bring it down to our level,
Does anybody want to talk about the training, or I can talk about the training? So there is this whole, training, initiative to figure out what we could do better this time around. And we've also formed a committee between all the different finance areas, procurement, budget, GCA, and the controller's office, to try to kind of make uniform training and learn, from each other what's, the best way to train. The original, training was provided by Deloitte consultants, just because we didn't have the bandwidth to do that. So of course, it's all Rutgers employees being trained now, and I know, specifically from Pete's area, from the controller's area, we're definitely going to be adding in subject matter experts from the controller's area, from payroll, wherever, to incorporate into the training, so that we can answer your questions, directly right then and there. And all the areas, this is what we're doing across the whole area in the finance areas, is incorporating the best practices. So that's what we're going to be doing. So
Yeah,
some of the training has been redone, and Ann has rolled out a new list of training for the finance systems. So all the areas are doing the exact same thing. We're going back to basics.
So this is an overview of the efforts, foundational, intermediate, and specialized. Really, the foundational and intermediate ones most important. And key point, these getting updated for addressing current processing and the training gaps that have been identified, as you suggested, along the way. We have UCO courses open and others coming out in the next few months. And throughout this process, to get feedback from those who are participating in it, so that it can continue to get better. I mean, we're going to be needing to train until the end of time, so this is not something that's one and done. It's one and continued, and try to improve it along the way. Just to go back where my screens didn't show before, this was the one in terms of certain queries. Again, you can pull all these down from the website, the posting. I'm going to do that. It was, was it this one? Yeah. Okay. That one, yeah. So let's just go on. Other questions? Just to give you a feel about, there's part of being in a cloud-based system is that there's a regular set of upgrades that goes on. We have a full release number coming up, release 12 in October. We waited till the last minute to do it to get other things stabilized. And did extensive testing, regression testing, if you will, on this to understand what would the impact be. In terms of how staff and faculty typically use Oracle, little to no impact, really. There will be some look and feel changes, but really not too much that's going to impact the user, but other things that are going on behind. We've had a lot of testers from both campuses and central units going through a 3-cycle process to test these and kind of say, what is changing for me or what isn't, understand that. And as a result, some Q&As have been posted and I think there's going to be a webinar in regards to the changes here. But one important thing to note is that between September 29th at 5 p.m. and October 2nd at 8 a.m., the system will be down. That's a weekend. Okay, now I'm going to do it this way. Okay. Part of the continuing effort to, I've talked for some time about how after the crisis of getting the accounts payable backlog done, procurement was in a position then to step back and start to say how to use the system the best way and to make adjustments. And this also comes out of the survey that we did, the need to have some basic information available. And this is the result of that. How to buy, how to pay, how to expense, reimburse. I saw the email just on the way over here. So just released today in terms of links to get to these guides and things that would walk you through certain processes or help through certain processes. So this has been a nice piece of work, but we'll continue getting input on the website. It's being overhauled to incorporate policies, business processes, forms, documentation, and also an intensive review of the policies themselves that need to get caught up to date. So that's I'm really happy about the work going on here, and it'll continue. Q4 of this year, meaning the upcoming quarter, both instructor-led training and web-based training along with job aids. This is something that as the other pieces start to get stable, will continue in all the functional areas. Questions on that? We getting anything on the? Okay. Yeah.
A quick question.
Great.
With the expense reports,
Yes.
I know I'm not resistant to change. I know in the old system, when an employee was put into payroll, they were automatically able to do, expense reports. And now, is there any plan to make it automatic? It seems like now it's a multi-step process. So we have especially with the fall, we have a ton of new employees coming in. They have to fill out a form that has to get inputted, and then another form needs to be filled out by the department for the finance approver, et cetera. So is there a way to automate that?
It is automated, but we've got a couple glitches in it. So I've just got a new person that's been hired for my department, 2 weeks ago, and this is one of the #1 priorities. We've got about 3,000 people that are in PeopleSoft that are not in the Oracle system, and we're trying to figure out what that problem is. So, and then we're going to get a file to get it updated, to get everyone loaded at a one-time deal, and then figure out what's happening on a daily basis. But it comes in every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning from PeopleSoft from the day before, and it should be updated daily. So we're trying to figure that out.
Continue to do what we're doing then until?
Yes.
That's
yes,
okay.
Yeah, it should be automatic. As soon as somebody's hired and they've got a net ID, it should be coming over to our Oracle system, and we've got a couple glitches that we're working out with the PeopleSoft team. Yeah.
But you'll still have to do the finance approver form because they won't be assigned somebody. So in order to get into the system, you have to have the finance approver.
Because that's not something that's available in PeopleSoft at this point.
Can we do it?
Maybe down in a new system, we might be able to, have that as an identified.
Is there a
area.
way that, if you know what department they're in, can you at least have like a default approver?
We do have a default approver. So in the PeopleSoft system, the HR manager for that employee is defaulted in. It may not be the person you want, approving the expense reports, but that's what comes in as a finance approver.
Which
and then
is-
you have to change that.
Which is totally fine.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
It's totally fine in some cases and not in others. Yeah.
for 300 people.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, so on this, just back to this, there was an email that came out this morning on this. Look in your inboxes. And I started poking through it, and it looks really good. So back in June, we did a survey of users, got a lot of good response, maybe not all good, but helpful in terms of identifying certain things. Yeah, and in particular, issues about clarity and messages. So these are things that give direct feedback for us to work on. Are they being sent frequently enough? What's going on with training communications? So all these areas are feeding in directly to changes, either in communications, in the training process, or what have you. One of the key things up here was people like to receive updates from email, but they'd also like to get more from their department supervisor. So this is something that we'll be focusing on, getting more information also to the department supervisor. Working on the Cornerstone website, what are things that we can improve and make that easier to use, and so on. But it was a useful, every single one of these things is resulting in an action or an attempt at improvement, so none of it was just left behind. Some of the key areas that came out of that directly, recognizing certainly that everybody had to absorb a lot of change at one time. We were combining two financial systems. We didn't have a whole lot of choice there, but certainly this is an area that as we go to the next one, the HR pay in particular, we'll need to focus a lot more on. Certain feedback in terms of the systems themselves that allow us to work on these, the reports for sure, training, and that you've seen in the initiative that I talked about, working on the help desks, these detailed how-to guides, the honest, consistent, targeted, timely updates, get that in a better format, and then customizing education for faculty. And that's something that we'll continue to work on too. I showed this before, but again, want to reemphasize that rethinking the whole training concept for each of the areas, and really getting it understood between the foundational, which is either for new people or for refreshers, and then more detailed things that have real ties back to current processes and previous training gaps. And as usual, resources that are available to you, and the way to send in feedback. I can guarantee you that every single thing that hits these two emails gets read, reviewed, and dispatched to the right place, because she does it. So, and if you're not on the RAIN listserv, get on the RAIN listserv if you deal with sponsored projects at all. That's really an important piece of vehicle for information. So, open questions. Yep.
I have a question with SideQuest. When you go in and you do a search by purchase order number, right now the newest numbers are showing on the bottom. So it's basically putting 1 million below 50,000, because it's not sorting it as a number, it's sorting it by its first digit. I was wondering if you were aware of that,
Okay.
and if there's a way to fix that. So if I go into SideQuest and I run a query for my project, and I want to see all the purchase orders on my project, it used to put them in numerical order with the newest one on top. Now, since the newest one is like 1 million, it's putting 90,000 on top, and it's putting 1 million on the bottom.
Right. What you're talking about is that since we flipped over beyond the number of digits.
We
into-
went an extra
We're
digit.
now into 7-digit PO numbers, and because they start with 1, the system reads it in almost an alphabetic way as opposed to
Right.
a numeric way. I wasn't necessarily aware that that was an issue, but you can, if you do a doc search and you pull back any number of POs, if that's what you're talking about, at the top, you can sort specifically from either dollar amount or there's different ways that you can actually sort the data. So there's a drop-down box
No,
at the
no,
top.
I understand that. I could sort by date, I could sort by
Right.
requisition, I could click the columns and it'll sort again.
Well, not even the columns. I'm saying if you're looking for the most recent ones, there's a way to do that at the top. What'll say the most recent date or the entry date or issue date or something to that
But
effect.
I might not know the date, you know, maybe I just want to look at the last ones that were done. Or maybe I'm searching by a sponsor, maybe I'm searching by a vendor and not an account. So I want to see, all right, what was the last purchase order done to that vendor, so I could use it as an
Right.
example going forward,
One
or
of the-
so forth.
One of the best ways to do that, regardless of this 6 or 7 digit situation, is to export a search. And then you can export it into Excel, and then you can manipulate it any which way, because that'll provide you with vendor data, which you can then use in any number of ways. Because it depends really upon what it is that you're searching for. If you're just looking for a particular transaction, and I don't know how many you're pulling back, but there's different ways of doing that. If you want to, I can talk to you about that in detail offline, and we
No,
can
I
go
mean,
over
I
that.
know I can export it, I know I could search it, and I can do whatever I want within Excel, but these are all extra steps. This is more time. And if I'm doing 10 queries a day or 20 queries a day, it's an extra 2 or 3 minutes to export it and do it. When it was coming back numerically, I didn't need to do that. I could just scroll down, click the one I wanted. Scroll down, click the one I wanted.
I'll have to check that, Steve, and get back to you. But I think if the ones that are now with 7 digits, those are the ones that are clearly the most recent ones. So if you're talking about entry date or issue date, there's a way to sort it that way. I'll get back to you on that.
All right.
Just to piggy off of that, you should be able to put a PO number in the search box in SideQuest, and it should come up. I find that 1 million purchase order come up that have nothing to do with the purchase order that I approved.
It depends upon where you're searching. If you're searching in the document search area and you're specifically searching purchase orders, and in the purchase order box you put in a PO number, then you will return only a PO. If you're searching in the general search box
Right.
and you put in any number of digits, or in the all documents section and you put in any number of digits, it could pull back POs, invoices, requisitions, anything that's anything that has that sequence of numbers contained therein
For the
So
whole
y-
university.
for the whole
Yes.
university.
No, but I've used that PO with a number search
Right.
and gotten just the one.
No.
Yeah,
If I
because
put a
I-
PO in the search box, right
No,
in
not in the search
SideQuest,
box, in the drop-down box.
well, you
where-
should be able though.
Where it says
I
your
was told-
choice of different types of documents, and and you pick PO, and then put in the number, and it'll bring back just yours.
Right. If you're searching in the upper right of the home page, that's a general search box, and if you
Yeah.
put in a sequence of numbers, it's going to pull back every document that has that sequence of numbers: POs, recs, receipts, invoices. So what you want to do is you want to go to the document search page that Steve was talking about, and you could select the specific type of document that you're searching on, purchase orders, and then you just put in the
Or
PO number.
requisition or
Yeah, I just wanted a quicker way, like if you have a vendor on the phone and you want to get a quick search, you just want to put the PO number. We know the PO number, and I thought the PO is a unique number. There aren't 2 of the same POs. So
no,
it
but
should,
there may be 2 of that set of digits.
That set of digit may be referenced in a
'Cause,
requisition
you know,
or an invoice.
Yeah, if a vendor puts in a requisition, or for that matter, if a vendor puts in our PO number in their requisition, it might be coming up that way. So going into that, this is one I've actually done myself, looking up for a PO.
Or sometimes if there's an invoice number from a supplier, think about your bottled water invoices that have 16 digits. If a combination of 7 digits matches what you're talking about, it would pull
It's going
that
to
back.
pull that up. So picking that specific one is, you know.
so is it safe to assume that if one wants to know if an invoice was paid, the fact that in SideQuest it says fully matched, does that mean that it was paid, even if there's no check number?
No.
Okay.
Not, to make sure that it's paid, you should actually go to Oracle. But from the SideQuest perspective, in the RU Marketplace, if you're looking at a specific invoice, you want to see a check number, and you want to see that the status is paid. And if it's payable, and and you have to look at the history to see the date as to when it was processed. If it's been processed in the last day or two, it means it's on its way to being paid. It's just the check number just hasn't been returned from
Or
Oracle.
if it's been matched and it's not due to be paid for another week.
That's a
It's
great
not
point
gonna
too.
go, if
Okay.
it's not due
So
to be
you have to search
paid.
in Oracle, not in SideQuest, for the
No,
payment.
No, if
Yeah,
it's
no,
been
it's
paid, it's gonna show up in the,
If it's been paid and we have a check date, it'll be in RU Marketplace. It will.
It will be.
But Mike's right. There's a lot of instances where it's been processed, but the due date on the invoice might be 30 days from now or 45 days from now, and so the check is not going to cut until then. So we won't have the check information.
yeah, we're not gonna pay early. We don't have to. Right, Adam?
So the expense doesn't post into the GL until the check is cut? Or does it post to the, because in the
No,
old
the-
system, it used to post as soon as it was processed. The check being cut had nothing to do with when it posted.
When it- yeah,
And
should.
that's what happens now. When we process the invoice, the processing of the invoice through integration goes from RU Marketplace to Oracle, the expense hits, and then depending upon the payment terms, that's when the payment is made.
So just because it's in managed expenditure items doesn't mean it's paid then.
No.
I have to go in SideQuest and see that a check was cut. Because it's going to post in managed expenditures today, the day you
That's right.
process it,
It's an
and the
account-
check's going to process 45 days from now.
Because it's an accounts payable, it is an expense as of the time you count it as accounts.
I don't have I understand
Yeah.
that. But I'm just saying, I just want to point out that just because it's in manager expenditure items doesn't mean it was actually paid.
That's right.
Okay.
That's standard, that would be
That's,
standard
maybe
accounting.
maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah.
I thought you guys just said the opposite.
No, 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 no.
All right,
Mm.
I'm sorry.
No, no. If it is matched and it goes over to Oracle, it's expensed.
Right.
It's set up as an accounts payable. It gets released when it's due.
But if my vendor calls me, I can't say it's paid yet.
No,
Right.
no,
Okay.
no.
One of the reasons why it might not be paid is it may not be due. That's all.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. But we will count it as an expense when it's matched and it goes across. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it.
It has to be matched in SideQuest, by the invoice processors, and it has to be approved by you before it comes over to Oracle to get accounted for.
If
So
it
that's-
requires approval.
If it requires approval, correct, yeah. So that's the only change. Before, it used to just come and hit your books immediately as soon as it was matched by the invoice processor. So that's the only change.
Other? Anything? Okay. We'll stick around. Anybody wants to ask questions offline, but thank you very much.